Hey, everybody, all three of you that are in the chat right now. This live stream has one main purpose, and that is admitting that uh, alcohol is worse than cannabis. And that's because I've gotten a couple of comments. And in those comments, people were like, oh, you're talking about cannabis, you're talking about pot, you're talking about marijuana, but you can't talk about alcohol. And it's like, no, the person I was addressing in those videos never had an alcohol problem that he was putting out on the internet. He was a fan of cannabis. And so that's why I was talking about it. But I'm more than willing to talk about alcohol or any other subject. Sometimes you get people that'll be like, oh, you'll talk about atheism and skepticism, but you won't talk about the rampant sexism and racism here on YouTube. And it's like, anything that you want to talk about, people will want to co opt and say, there's something more important that you could be talking about. You know, why do you want to fight with other atheists when there's Christians to talk about? You know, so whatever I'm talking about, don't think that I just want to talk about that. You know, um, I'm willing to talk about other things. It's just when you're talking about one subject, people will always come in and try to co-opt that and get you to talk about another subject. Um, so Nerdman says he can admit that alcohol is worse than pot, and to know if he can go now and just end this stream. No, there's all the different ways that cannabis is worse than pot that I'm willing to talk about right here, right the fuck now. So let's get them all out. Nerdman, what life generating problem do you have? Life generated problem. I know weed generates its own problems. Corny. Okay. Yes, breathing is a problem that life generates. In fact, the leading cause of death in any country, in my opinion, is birth. They correlate together. When someone gets born, they fucking die, right? And they do a lot of breathing in between. Taylor Williams wants to know: is there room for freedom? That's a tricky question because whenever I have freedom posed to me by someone who is uh, by all measurable standards an addict, they'll be like, "Can I have the freedom to just use in my recreational time?" And I'll be like, "How free are you if you can't quit for a little while?" Especially if they're on paper, if they're on probation or parole, and they're telling me, you know, they want to have the freedom to use. And in Colorado, it's legal for people who are not on paper, who are not on probation or parole, to use pot, but then they can't use it because they are on paper and they have sanctions. Why is that? Why don't they have the same freedoms? I'm like, how free are you if your life must have this drug in it? If you can't complete this little bit of time without using it in order to have a shorter sentence. Because if you come a pot for pot, the sentence gets extended, you know? So yeah. There's a lot of people I know that are in like downward spirals that aren't really free with drugs. Drugs can be their own self-imposed prison. I like that you said exterminate, nerd man. It reminds me of Doctor Who, and I am a Doctor Who fan. Um, I'm a Whovian. Sorry. So, in general, with the dangers, um, I think that cannabis, as far as experimenting with it, is a bit safer than alcohol, especially when people want to up the amount of either. Drinking, in my opinion, is so much worse, and I can tell you different ways, but I'm going to start with I, as an addiction counselor, have worked in many different settings. Okay, when I worked with people on paper, criminals, they would normally be referred to me not for alcohol. They were drinking, but what would happen is they would be able to stop drinking for at least a day before they had their piss test, right? Sometimes they would get advance notice of when they were going to get their urinalysis. So there are drugs that stay in your system longer. Cannabis, for regular users in Colorado, stays in your system for about 3 weeks. For someone who just smokes one joint and is sweating whether or not they're going to be able to pass their piss test, he might be able to clean his system out in a week. But for someone who's using the medical grade stuff that is sold by the dispensaries here in Colorado, it takes about 3 weeks to clean out your system, right? And it happens in like uh, a logarithmic fashion. You lose the most cannabis out of your system, the most THC out of your system in the first week. And then it's that last bit that just hangs on for another week and a half, and it's like 3 weeks later that you can finally pass the piss test. I don't know much about the kratom, except for that in other states, there were some holistic doctors that were prescribing it to try to get people off of their other addictions. Um, I would recommend if you have to have something to do, become a coffee aficionado or a tea aficionado and like get into it. Like there is so much for the prep of that or something. If you absolutely need something to do, it's like a smoker using toothpicks or chewing gum throughout his day. If you need something to do with your hands, there are things that you can ingest that can take a lot of preparation, you know. How'd you find the coffee emoji? I haven't explored the emojis. By the way, everybody, this live stream had another sub purpose to it. I want one of you to donate $1 to me. And the way that I want you to do it is figure the fuck out how to do super chat. I know this is a thing that's just been launched. And if one of you can do a super chat, basically it'll take whatever you want to say and keep it posted, right? And I have no idea how it works. It just came out. And all I need is $1 from like one of you to just keep your thing posted. I just want to see how it works, and see how the payout happens because I saw when we used to have that button on our channel pages to donate directly to us through the Google Wallet. I saw that I was getting like 63 cents on the dollar when I was with an MCN. And I don't know where it is, Taylor. I don't know where it is. I know. It's a new thing. I don't even know that if I have the feature. That's why this is just a little point off topic. Corny says that rolling a spliff gives you its own joy. Um, what I've seen in other drugs, uh, like personally, I've seen someone preparing to smoke some meth in a light bulb, and I didn't know what he was about to do at the time, but he whipped out a pocket knife and he was carving the top of the bottom of the light bulb, the one of the leads on the light bulb. He was carving like the plastic that separates the two metal parts as the dielectric. He was just carving that out, right? And then he took all the insides of the light bulb out, and then he dumped table salt into the light bulb, right? Shook it all around, dumped it out, and all the white paint that was on the inside of the light bulb, the table salt just ground that stuff right out of the light bulb. So then he had the glass bulb to be able to smoke his method. And he used a pen to make a straw because he didn't have a straw around. He just like took all the parts of the pen apart, and he was using the straw to suck out all the smoke after he lit it in the light bulb. And when I saw all this, I was like, motherfucker, why aren't you trying to cure cancer? Like, there's all this setup and chemistry in using this drug. Like, you're fucking MacGyvering this shit. Why can't you put all this effort into something else? You know? But then, of course, he was able to keep his house far cleaner than me because he would get obsessive while he was on his meth. And so I can't talk too much about his lack of motivation when I've got some dirt around here I need to clean up. Talk about rolling cigarettes. Um, Along with admitting that alcohol is worse than cannabis, I also want you all to hear me say that tobacco is the deadliest drug in America. Probably the world, but at least in America. And if you were to add up all of the people that die of tobacco related causes, things like COPD, emphysema, lung cancer, other cancers that can be traced back to the carcinogens in tobacco, if you add up all of that shit, you know, the hypertension, the heart attacks that are related to ruining your cardiovascular system with tobacco, add up all of that stuff, and it kills more people every year than all the other drugs and alcohol put together. Okay, and I'm not just pulling these figures out of my ass. I get given these figures in trainings regularly just to be a part of my profession. And I know some of you might be like, "Oh, well, that's just the bias of your profession." You know, no, this is this. There's a science to it. Okay, I believe in the description box I have left a link for the few people who disagree that cannabis is a gateway drug and think that I can't find studies very easily that would agree with the point that cannabis is a gateway drug. But Bicho wants to know if I'm doing this as live or if I'm just recording a video. No, I'm reading your fucking comments. Uh, yes, nerd man. Even though tobacco kills more people than any other drug, birth is the main cause of death in any place. Birth, um, and I'll go along with argumentum ad absurdum, uh, just for shits and giggles, but at some point you have to realize that some of these things you can control and make your life better with, and some of these things are just existential. I wish you were joking more, Sarah, about statistics being a social construct. when I see the anti-intellectual arguments being put out by the extreme social justice warriors, some of the things that the anti-social justice warriors have been jumping on, some of that shit, like allowing witchcraft and bullshit and woo into schools as respectable sciences, on par with science. No. God, that hurts. Bijo says anything can be a gateway drug. That is true, but we have hard evidence for alcohol and tobacco and cannabis correlating to the use of harder drugs later in life, because we do surveys of everyone who shows up in a detox, in a emergency room, or in a treatment center. We do surveys before and after their treatment, and we ask things about their life. So the data that we get from this is ongoing, right? In Colorado, it's called day codes, right? That's how we pronounce it, but uh, uh, it's an acronym, DACOD, if you want to look it up. And basically, we can see the age that someone reports that they first started using each drug that they use, right? And while I'll say that cannabis is a gateway drug, other drugs that probably predate cannabis as gateways would include alcohol, tobacco, and sugar. Sugar needs a lot more attention on it, especially here in America. I'm now down 30 pounds on the year for cutting out high fructose corn syrup out of my diet. Not that I'm one of those wackos who thinks that high fructose corn syrup is all bad. It's a very great way of loading your diet with calories. I don't even think that McDonald's is all bad. It's a lot of calories for your money, and if you're starving, it's great. We have a great cure for starvation here in America. We just have to work on the other cures for obesity. As far as whether the drugs themselves are the cause, or if there's genetics involved, or co-occurring disorders, that's something that I would look at on a personal level, like client to client. But um, self-medication is a thing, and there are plenty of people that plenty of my pot activist friends that you've seen in videos on my channel that would agree that using cannabis for pain control is a lot better than using opiates. And I think that the opiate epidemic, especially going from oxycodone to heroin because it's cheaper, epidemic in America, would bear that out, because what happens with people's lives after they start injecting heroin is far worse than somebody who's Mr. Will wants to know what happens if you come to the video late. Well, after I hit stop broadcast, this thing goes into a processing mode for up to an hour after I hit stop. And then it gets re-uploaded as a regular video. All of the people who watched it while I was streaming count as views, and then it just adds view count as if it was a normal video. I have actually seen people go stir crazy when they don't get their runner's high. When I was serving in the military, there were guys who could run very fast, like Olympic level fast, and they would run every day. And if they went a day or two without running because they were on a field training exercise and every second of their day was being taken up by military stuff, because we were on basically a high tech camp out in the mountains, they would start to go crazy because they couldn't get their run in. Because you don't exactly do PT, you don't do physical training while you are high level camping exercises. Nobody said free drinks and heroin, shameless James. Um, but you reminded me that I did mean to get personal. By the way, I'm sorry that my camera is not focusing well. Like it's supposed to autofocus, and here's my fingernails. Right, you can see some good detail. You can see the wrinkle on my knuckles. Right, but then when I pull my fingers away, it doesn't follow. This thing's supposed to autofocus, and I might just need a new webcam because you're supposed to be able to read that subscribe pillow behind me. That's what I focus on with my other cameras. But this shit is just not working for me. Diet methadone. You know, I've actually seen people switch to medical grade cannabis to get themselves off methadone because methadone was ruining their lives. You know, they go from heroin and OxyContin to methadone. They get part of they become part of a clinic, and then they have to earn privileges to get take-home doses from the methadone clinic. So before they earn that privilege, which takes months to earn, they have to show up at the clinic every morning, right? Every morning to get their dose. And if they live within a certain radius of it, that's fine. But there are people who don't live close to the methadone clinic. In fact, many states have just one methadone clinic at their state capital city, and if you don't live within range of that city, you're fucked if you want to get on methadone. So they get on the methadone, that they're just as fucked up on the methadone for trying to work as they would have been on the heroin. And so they're drowsy, they're falling asleep. They can't have a desk job because they will fall asleep at their job. And they can't operate heavy machinery because they're on methadone. That would be a nightmare. So working and being on methadone is problematic. You wouldn't even want somebody working at your local deli operating the slicer if they were on methadone. So what happens when people switch from methadone to high potency cannabis? They get a lot of the clarity that they were missing from when they were on methadone back. Their brain isn't as foggy. They have been on that for a certain time. I wouldn't even be able to tell past the smell of sour diesel in the air, like the lemony skunk. I wouldn't even be able to tell that they were on pot, some of them. If they're using edibles or they're using the Phoenix tears, that it's like concentrated gunk that they squirt in their mouth, I many times couldn't tell you that they were on anything just by looking at them or interviewing them. But doing a blood test, you'd be like, holy shit, especially with Phoenix tears. Yeah, smoking gets a bad rap from smokers, Mr. Will. Like, why would anyone start smoking when if you were just to read the reviews of smoking on, say, Amazon, if someone was selling smoking, like 1-star reviews from anyone who's done it, and they would all be telling you, don't start, don't start, you know? For many addictions, Sarah, it is about your mentality and your personality, if you have that addictive personality. But there are some substances, the ones that we categorize in schedules, that we know can overpower even the people who don't normally have an addictive nature to them. And unfortunately, cannabis is one of those things that, while it's addictive, it's scheduled far worse than things that are more addictive. Um, but you're right, sex and money, especially gambling, is even recognized as an addiction. Running is not, should be, but there isn't enough research behind those things to get them listed in the DSM formally. Let's see. Uh, Forcing the body to take something that it hates is not part of addiction. Actually, it's the reward center of the brain being short circuited that is part of addiction. You get dopamine rewards whenever you do something that you're supposed to uh, like, right? But there are drugs that can short circuit that. And if we go all the way down to the level of sugar and fats, your body is programmed to love sugar and fats. And if you start getting addicted to food, it's because you're getting a whole bunch of food that is laden with fat and sugar, right? So you'll start to get this reward center hijacked in your brain. No, Mr. Will, it's not about overcoming a natural resistance to it. It's about a natural pathway of reward being hijacked by something that shouldn't be doing that. If we were perfect beings, eating a Big Mac would make you sick all the time. You would eat just as much as you need, no more and no less, right? But instead, our brains are programmed by thousands of years of caveman living where there were scarcity. And so you're supposed to seek out the most richest foods, right? Unfortunately, here in America, and we're spreading this culture all over the place, we've got really great food, you know? And so you shouldn't be seeking that food out all the time, but your brain is programmed: seek out the sugar, seek out the fat, seek out the salt. Bruce Shepard is here to pass judgment on the rest of us and call us all heathens. That's nice. Since Bruce is here, we're going to steer away from the topic of sex addiction. Let's see. No, Bruce, THC doesn't counteract opiate withdrawal, but as many people have pointed out in my comment section, sometimes you can punch yourself in the arm and not feel that you have a Charlie horse in your leg. Corny, not everyone gets red eye when they use cannabis. And some of them use eye drops. Eye drops are a big thing here in Colorado. We have like new startup brands of eye drops. Nerdman wants to know why someone would jump out of an airplane. Um, I have never heard of skydiving being considered an addiction, but thrill seeking is its own classification somewhere else in the DSM. Um, but you could hijack the reward center of your brain with thrill seeking. I see that a lot more in the types of video games that people play. There are a lot, the ones that are addictive, a lot more to do with dangerous scenarios and uh, countdowns to things and time limits that provide additional stress. Jim says smoking weed makes it easier to deal with kids. Um, if it were prescribed, I think that it might actually benefit some people from postpartum stress disorder. And we might actually save the life of, like, statistically, one kid in America if, like, thousands of women who have postpartum get prescribed pot. One kid might not have his mom kill him. So is it worth it? Introducing all those people to pot just to save the life of that one kid? I wouldn't do it. But I'm not the attorney. Yes, it is crazy when people pay a lot of money to jump out of airplanes and bridges and whatnot. I think that people need to buy that PS4 fucking VR headset. It's a lot cheaper, probably the price of one jump out of an airplane, and you could have simulated jumps like forever. You know what's scarier than the bridges and the planes that people jump off of? When people want to bungee jump off of arches in Arches National Park or nearby places, because then they're tying their ropes around like natural land formations and stuff. I just don't trust that shit. You know what it really scares me is, as somebody who has like slight fear of heights, there are some videos on YouTube where people have like a fisheye lens that they'll have like a GoPro like this, right? And the fisheye lens on the GoPro, it's mounted to their bike, and they'll be doing this extreme mountain climbing biking, the extreme mountain biking. Holy shit! With the fisheye lens, that'll trigger you if you're afraid of heights. Ugh. Stella, I'm sorry you had a bad experience, but I actually wish that more people had bad experiences on some of their drugs. Like, I've known people who are extreme alcoholics who never have headaches, hangovers, and on one hand, you might call them blessed with no headaches, that they never have headaches. But that's a natural response that you should be having to the dehydration and the poisoning that you're doing to yourself with alcohol, right? That's your body's way of telling you, hey, this is not something that you should be doing. And they don't have it. And it could be like genetic. And I have noticed it in redheads a little bit more than other people, that they don't get headaches like other people do. And I think that there actually might be a connection between red hair and no hangover headaches. I wish that we could do studies and make it ethical, and so it would pass ethical review boards for me to get a whole bunch of gingers drunk to study this. But right now, you're just going to have to go on my anecdotal evidence after seeing thousands of people in hospitalized situations. I agree that the dichotomy between consciousness and unconsciousness is really interesting. Um, I make conscious decisions to buy a diet soda with no high fructose corn syrup in it to keep my unconscious brain from walking my ass down to the fridge and opening up a real full bodied soda with high fructose corn syrup in it. So I actually, just like a smoker who chews on a lot of bubble gum, I am stocking my fridge with diet soda. I've got 3 of them here. My favorites are the ones that aren't regular flavor. Diet Mountain Dew sucks donkey balls. Coke tastes like buttered ass. Um, the aftertastes are the worst. So when I get Diet Dr Pepper, I get the one with cherry in it. And my favorite is when you get those machines with 100 flavors. It's a fountain machine, and you can get the vanilla put in with your cherry. But I also get A&W cream soda diet, and I like the flavor of Coke Zero Vanilla. Here's the problem with Coke Zero Vanilla. There once was a skit on Mad TV about potato chips with Oleo, the non-trans fat alternative, and how those potato chips had 10% less anal leakage. Well, whatever they're putting in Coke Zero Vanilla, it makes my shits greasy, right? So I can't drink a lot of this shit. I love the taste, but I have noticed that this does something to your shit. So that's my review of Coke Vanilla. Good going in, not so much going out. Unless you're constipated. Let's see. Has anyone figured out how to do the super chat and give me $1 and post something stupid? I really want to. If I have this function, I would really like to know. No, this stream does not count as your continuing education hours, but let's say in a time frame of 5 years from now, I do plan on having my own ability to give classes that would count towards continuing education for certain fields. Mike Snow says that weed makes him want to eat cheeseburgers. And see, the munchies that he's talking about there, one-time use level, when people think of it that way, that weed can lead to an appetite for food, they don't think of the weed as being a gateway drug in the larger sense, right? But the fact that weed is desensitizing part of your brain so that when you overeat, you don't feel as bad when you're doing it, that is part of the gateway drug sequence. Okay? There are studies with lab mice where they give the mice weed, and then a couple days later they give them other drugs, and the ones that had the weed are desensitized. And in the description box of this video, I saved a link to where you can find the studies. I came prepared for that one. Jordy, you're the second person to ask me about kratom, and the only thing I think about that is FDA regulations of it for no fucking reason whatsoever except for lobbying from the big pharma industry is bullshit. Because kratom hadn't killed anyone. They hadn't proven that it was dangerous to anyone, and just regulate it just because they figured out that it exists and it's been helping people. No, I don't like it. And I don't know the science behind how kratom has been getting people off of their addictions, but I do know that the placebo effect for many different things works. And I'm at the point right now where if it's the placebo effect that is getting somebody off of a drug, especially from the atheist point of view of if it's religion that is getting people off of a drug, I'm all fucking for it. Let's go all in on this placebo. I know when people are praying that it's not really doing much in reality, but it's helping them get off of fucking drugs. And so if someone asks me, I'm stuck here in this facility and there's not much to read and I really wish I had a Bible, I have a fucking stack of Gideon Bibles underneath my fucking desk to hand people a fucking Bible if that's what they want to read. Yes, I do. And I'm an atheist. I have the big Gideon's Bibles, and I have the little small Proverbs readers that they gave me. Just, one or the other. I'm a Bible slinger at work. Fuck it. If it's going to get you to stop smoking crack, here's a Bible. I'd rather have you religious than on crack. Yes, Sarah, startups of eye drops. If you go to tomorrow, I'm going to the home show in Denver. Like there's at the convention center downtown. Any kind of show like survivalist shows, you'll see products that are tailored towards the new weed market here in Colorado. And one of those products is people making their own eye drops. Yes, it's a thing. Some of them they're like fancy apothecary things. I'm sorry I'm backed up on all these comments, but I have a lot to say about every goddamn thing that you guys have to say. And there's a lot of you now. Where the fuck are you all coming from? There's 18? Fuck, I was expecting like 2 or 3 who really just wanted to hear me say that alcohol is worse than pot. Jim Stacy says weed is good for taking big poops. I wouldn't know. Personal note here, I have never smoked weed ever in my life. And some of you might be thinking, how are you going to tell people how to get off weed if you've never tried it before in your life? And to that, I'm just going to say, would you like your surgeon to be an amputee, or would you like your cops to all have felony records? If you're getting treatment from me, I'm here to tell you how to live a good life, not how to use drugs. If you want to know all about using drugs, go talk to your dealer. If you want to know about how to live your life clean, you come talk to me. Jeff says I look taller live. I moved the fucking camera closer. I could push it back, and look smaller. There you go. I am 6'1". Sometimes I look 6 foot. Sometimes I look 6'2". Right now, I'm at 280 pounds. So I wish you were saying you looked skinnier, but just dropping 30 pounds in a year, nobody fucking notices. I get no fucking credit for that shit. Nerdman says the Matrix is the future. I think that some of the people that you haven't seen on YouTube lately, especially Cult of Dusty, how his output has lessened a lot, is because he's got his own fucking VR room. He built this shit like a shed in his backyard. There are people who are discovering this great experience of virtual reality, and they're not putting out 2D experiences for you guys anymore. My brother is one of them. My brother works in the IT professions. I can't say where he works, but him and his friends are coming up with content for VR systems. And, as big of a jump as the Nintendo 64 was from the classic NES, I think that VR is the next big thing. And when they start putting out more games for it, especially for PlayStation 4, it's probably going to take over like VHS kicking Betamax's ass. Jordy, don't ever try a wingsuit, especially not on pot. Jim Stacy says crime is addictive. Um, I would tend to agree. I do think that there are parts of that lifestyle, the thrill and the rush of pulling one over on people. Con men get a rush like that. People that steal copper out of houses after burglarizing to feed their meth habit. The crime component to it is addictive, and there are programs that deal with both relapse in substances and recidivism in crime as co-occurring disorders because one of those. Indoor skydiving. I really want to try it. Here's the problem. I need my own indoor skydiving tube because I'm fat. And I'm not worried about like hitting other people in the tube. What I'm worried about is like the amount of air that it takes to lift a 150-pound person in one of those wingsuits. You know, that's probably less air than it takes to lift me. You know, I weigh twice as much as the other people. So I've never seen a fat person in a skydiving tube at the mall. I've never seen that. Mike's giving out references to Super Silver Haze and Purple Kush. Purple Kush is actually marketed a lot here in Colorado, but the Sour Diesel seems to be the uh, best high for your money. The Incredible Hulk strains that they sell here, those are the ones that my clients prefer for their money. Purple Kush would be like if you came into a lot of money and you were going to splurge on something good. But regular users here, they all smell like sour diesel. Jordy thinks that I should make more live streams. I actually hate live streams for certain reasons. One of which is the kind of live stream where there's like 5 or 6 people that are all hanging out together. I hate that shit because I think it might be my equipment or just the fact that I'm not good at shutting other people down, but I get talked over a lot. And when I have like so much to say pent up in me and I only get like 2 sentences out in an hour, it pisses me off. So I just don't do that a lot. I'm getting backed up in your comments a lot. So I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker. I've never seen the antenna repair guy fixing an antenna 400 meters tall, but I used to work in refineries where they had vessel towers that were even taller than that. And I used to have to replace equipment on them. And I got used to it. I got desensitized. But I think a big component of that is having control over your hands on the ladder versus when you're watching a video of somebody else doing all the work and making turns that you're not ready for. I think that's a little bit scarier. Jim Stacy, I've never heard about farts becoming addictive, but I have had to wade through the smells in a detox facility with over 100 people in the same room, all detoxing. And yes, they do fart. And I don't like it when homeless people take their shoes off because the stink fills the room. There's like a force field, an invisible force field of stink that surrounds them for about 20 feet. Um, love homeless people, love to help them, but goddamn, there's a shower in that detox facility for a reason. Don't take your fucking shoes off if you're not going to take a shower. Shameless James, I'm happy that you're still with us with the level of alcohol that you were drinking. Um, you beat the odds. Now, grab that ball and run with it. You know, do something good with your life now that you got your life back. God damn it, Billy Bong's here. Ah, how can I talk about cannabis being worse than alcohol when Billy Bong is now section? That's peer pressure right there. Uh, redheads have souls, don't they? Well, I don't even believe that anyone has a soul, but I don't see it why a ginger person would have less of a soul than anyone else, given that I don't believe in souls or sin as a magical sticky wrongness that sticks to your soul that there's no evidence for, or blessings or curses or any of that shit. Let's see. Wow, you guys can type faster than me. Wow. Yeah, no, I don't like the 12 step groups at all. Um, Here's one of the things about 12 step groups, Jordy, uh, besides them shoehorning religion into people's lives. Um, when I'm in certain situations, like in an emergency room or a detox, the forms that I have before me that I have to fill out as an addiction counselor will say referral, right? And if I'm working alongside people who are religious as addiction counselors, oftentimes if they can't get someone to agree to go to a treatment facility or go to detox from the emergency room and wait until they're sober, they will ask them, will you at least go to an AA meeting? And then they'll put in that box for referral. I referred the client to an AA meeting, and client accepted the referral to go to an AA meeting. And to me, that's like a cop out. That's such a cop out that's even an option that we can refer someone to a program that has no better outcomes statistically than background noise. Like you are 5%, you have a 5% chance of spontaneous remission of your alcoholism. And you have a 5% success rate at AA plus or minus like 2%. So you could actually be hurting someone by sending them to AA, as a referral. And I think it's bullshit that that's even allowable. But AA is considered to be the be all end all by some people who are in my field. You know, they allow AA meetings in hospitals to treat the people in the emergency room. They allow AA meetings into detoxes, not just AA, all 12 step groups, right? They have hospitals and institutions programs, the H&I programs in AA, just to outreach to those communities. So they'll take a home group, and then after they're done with their hour, they'll do an hour at the local hospital, right? Where they'll bring their meeting into the hospital to encourage others that are at the hospital to experience 12 step groups. It's, I'll go on a limb here and just say 12 step groups are a cult. By every measure that I would call something a cult, they are a cult. Just like CrossFit. Fuck you, CrossFitters out there who are ruining exercise for everyone. CrossFit is also a cult. I'm only reading the comments to where you guys are responding to my sodas. I put that up like 5 minutes ago. Shit. Uh, Man, you guys type faster than me. And nobody's figured out Super Chat yet to give me $1. I need a fucking dollar so I can see what percentage I get based on being part of just Google monetization and not part of an MCN. Bruce isn't happy that I'm comparing religion to placebos. Um, Bruce should be counting his blessings, as it were, that I didn't jump in on the discussion about whether or not religion should be considered a mental disorder, because I left that alone. But I'm sure I could have become a part of that conversation. That happens like cyclically here on YouTube. Like there's the religion is a mental disorder conversation, and that's followed in the next season by all babies are atheists season, and where we celebrate Bionic Dance's birthday. Hello, a bit of the universe. Hello, Belgian Dan. Welcome, Robert Wallace. You don't have to send me a copy of a book, but you do have to give me like the Amazon listing so I can get a copy of it. My girlfriend Misty, she loves like downloading e-copies of everything, so I might not buy it, but I'll get the e-copy. Let's see. Yes, my hair does add like a whole inch to my height. If I were to smush it down, it it smushes, but like it'll fight product. There's no product in my hair, right? But like if I were to slick it down to try to hold it down to my head, about an hour later, it's just popped up and greasy feeling. So I don't use product at all. I gave up. My hair's just gonna fucking stand on end for the rest of my fucking life. Thank you, Nightingale, for smoking a bong as we speak. What is the bong smoking and or drinking game for this hangout? What is it that I'm saying that is cueing you to do a bong rip? Don't select ums and uhs because I do a lot of that shit, and you can't hang with how many ums and uhs that I can put into a hangout. Uh, Robert, this has been going on for about an hour now. Sorry. Yeah, I'm like 10 minutes behind in the chat, and whenever you typed that I'm 10 minutes behind the chat, bit of the universe, that's here's the benchmark. Feel how behind I am. This will be available tomorrow, Robert, for everyone to review. Let's see. Nightingale, congratulations on your weight loss of 80 pounds. Please, please drop weight safely and think about what is the uh, safe limit for dropping weight. And I say this, I don't know what your situation is, but one of my friends, Inventor Gorilla, he was trying to uh, be healthier just before he died. He got some bad news from his doctor about cholesterol. And on his Facebook, he was posting all of these different recipes he was trying, and he was taking food to work. And he was exercising with P90X, which going from no exercise to P90X or CrossFit or anything else crazy like that is overdoing it. And he was dropping weight, and then he kicked the bucket with a heart attack. Right? He was found dead in his sleep. And if you were to look at his Facebook, all the things that he posted for like months before that, he was living an extremely healthier diet. So if you dropped 80 pounds in a year, please get with a nutritionist, get with a doctor, and make sure you're doing it in a healthy way because you could be fucking yourself for trying to be healthy. Mr. Will, I am not hiding behind my beard. I I just can't picture myself without a beard all the time. Like there are videos on my YouTube channel that have no beard me, like especially ones when I was working in refineries as an electrician, and I just had a mustache and the soul patch, right? And I had blonde hair. And when I see that shit, I cringe myself. You know, I just can. My mental image of myself has a beard. That's it. The reason why I had no beard while I was in the refineries is because you have to wear a respirator if needed. And I never had to, but they just required that you were respirator ready in case there was like a gas leak at the refinery. That's why Inventor Gorilla, before he died, why he didn't upload as much for a couple of years, but when he had no facial hair, it's because his job was requiring it. I'm gonna miss the lunar eclipse tonight, Yellow Labrador, but the next solar eclipse, I actually have plans to go to Nebraska to catch it, to be within that area. A lot of my friends are going up to Casper, Wyoming. A lot of the skeptics groups around Denver, because that's the closest place. But Misty wants to see a whole bunch of abandoned houses and like a ghost town and shit and make a whole trip of it. So we're taking vacation and we're going to Nebraska. A bit of the universe. The copper thieves around here actually like to hit new home construction, right? Because there are like spools of copper that'll be laid out, and recently buried copper cable lines, and they will steal a truck in order to tie a rope to the end of the truck and pull copper out of the ground. That's how bad the addiction is here in my neck of the woods. I have no idea what you mean by on the roofs video, Jordy. Like I know I can live stream with my phone now because I have 10,000 subscribers, but pretty much everyone's going to be able to do that soon. So why would I have a pitched roof? Can't you tell by this is in my second story. My office is in my second story. That roof right there is pitched. The fuck no, I'm not going on that roof. I don't like the name green crack, Robert. I don't like the word crack. I don't like my clients stigmatized by that because I figure that when I write down cocaine, they think my client is using the white man's drug, and if I write down crack, they think that they're using the black people ghetto drug. So anything with the word crack in it, I don't like. They should rename whatever you're smoking. You guys are all naming all your favorite pots in my chat. I'm an addiction counselor, and you're using my chat to recommend your favorite pots to each other. Thank you very much for this. Sea Beach says Blue Chat will be making a return, and I will probably return to it as well, depending on what time it airs. Jordy wants me to bring back the OG Hate Club. Actually, something similar to it was in the works, and it's why I'm actually known for not pulling off live streams because I was using the events tab in YouTube to start these hangouts that weren't broadcasted, but we were working on a project like that. Um, I will let you know some of the details personally. Jordy, it wasn't always my show. I'm the one who coined the term hate club, but it was actually, in my opinion, that was something that never would have gotten off the ground without James Pope and Callens being there, because they were the ones really pushing for it to become a thing. I was making a joke when I coined it, just like how tea parties happened because one motherfucker on Fox News said we need to have our own little tea party, and then people started taking it fucking seriously. That's how it got out of control. My dogs are barking at me now because I'm talking too loud. Yes, Blue Chat has evolved into something that had its roots in other things, but is not uh, anything like what originally happened with the Hate Club format. And part of that has to do with how live streaming has evolved. You know, the original Hate Club shows were all recorded using Skype, you know, because that was the only technology available. And there were no chat streams going alongside them. Thanks for stopping by, Robert. I understand that no one really can stand my rambling on for very long. I'm not trying to be late on reading your posts, a bit of the universe, but yes, I'm like a 15-minute lag. Mike Snow thinks that growing weed can be addictive. Um, in the gambling sense, I can see where businesses, just the entrepreneurial spirit, is very close to gambling addictions. I experienced this myself, as when my business was failing, I threw everything that I had into it in order to try to save it. The color balance on my camera is now off, and I can see how it's like fading back to off. Whatever. A bit of the universe wants me to scroll all the way to the bottom. I'm going to answer everyone's fucking question as I get to it. I'll eventually catch up, just like Jordy said. Yes, Mr. Will, CrossFit is a fucking cult. And I'm looking at you. Okay? I'm looking at you. I see the kind of exercise clothes that you're wearing, and I'm wondering, are you being sucked into one of those gym cults? No, I'm not going to dislocate my shoulders for anything. And I'm not going to like break my legs trying to jump on top of a higher milk crate. You know how many CrossFit people I've seen with the front of their shins like split open with gashes because they're trying that jump on top of a box thing? It's a, it's jumping on top of a box. That's all it is. Why do you need to do that in your life, to jump onto a box that's like 5 foot tall in front of you? Whoever has to do shit like that? I do run on a treadmill a bit of the universe. When I go to the gym, that's my preferred exercise because it's easier on my body than some of the other exercises. Even though some people will say that the bike is easier on your joints, for me, I haven't experienced that. Plus, I can put my tablet on the screen of the treadmill, and it, on the angle that it is, it'll actually hold, and I can watch all of your YouTube videos, everyone, while I'm exercising, so I can kill two birds with one stone. I put my headset on and or watch Rachel Maddow, because for some reason she's on every time Misty wants to go to the gym, and she's the like, of all the TVs around, she's the one thing that I feel like watching while I'm on a treadmill. Super chat is not like super jail. It's like the opposite. It's like buying your way into having a post in this chat be stuck, like a pinned post. And none of you have figured out how to do it, or I don't have the option yet. So I will see if I can get super chat turned on, because I figure in an hour somebody would have paid me $1 just to see how it works, to help me see how it works. Prince Noob Sauce says Tybo. I remember when Tybo was a thing with like workout VHS tapes and whatnot, and it was nowhere near as crazy as P90X and CrossFit. Pilates used to be a thing too. Pilates was a trend, and it never hurt people like CrossFit does. I feel nude without a beard too. I do count my money while sitting at tables. Is that a Kenny Rogers joke? Fuck you, Prince Noob Sauce. Fuck you and your fucking 10-foot long fucking dreads. Choke on your fucking dreads, motherfucker. You fucking come with the fucking Kenny Rogers fucking jokes. I'm losing weight, god damn it. You keep on fucking putting the lyrics to that fucking song. Does anyone know any other fucking song by Kenny fucking Rogers? Really? So Nightingale figured out how to put my name in like highlighted stuff. I don't think that that's super chat. Oh, you can put users in timeout and shit and report, remove, go to channel. You can't pin them on your own though. I was looking for pin. Exercise is good for depression. Yes. Thank you for congratulating me for 10,000 subs. I'll say that I consider my sub count to be on par with like something between Robert Wallace and Kazoom, because I've been doing this for fucking years, and really the average view count of my videos is on par with them, and they have like a third of the subscribers, right? So it's just a number. And I've done things to manipulate it with like clickbait and stuff and changing my format and talking about different subjects. Whereas somebody who talks about the same subject all the time can get view counts that actually eclipse their subscriber count. I'm not one of those people who treats this like a mini TV show. So I get people who are only subscribed to me so that I'll come up with in their feed talking about another YouTuber and starting drama. And I don't always do that. So they're not going to click on anything unless I name somebody in the title of the video. Really having like 10,000 subscribers, like some of these channels that do art where they'll have like 1 million views per video, but they only have 10,000 subscribers. No, I don't even like the word butt crack, Kirnoth. Butt crack, it sounds funny. Robert was saying that he likes the word turd. And I was like, turd blossom, turd burglar. Yeah, it's a funny word. Butt crack. Let's see. No, Mr. Will, we're not jumping on boxes because I'd probably crush the boxes. I got fat jokes for the fat that you used to have, Mr. Will. I inherited you're fat. Yeah, Super Chat is a strange name for it. And I think I have gotten to the end of the chat. I finally fucking caught up, and there's still 14 of you watching. Yes, goodness sake, I have caught up. And if nobody has any more questions for me, I will end the show with at least the straight statement of yes, I admit alcohol is worse than cannabis. My favorite color used to be white, but not like in the racist sense, you know, more like in the of tunnel kind of imagery, or like just the bright white that comes off of a computer screen when you're trying to use a word processor. That's why I like the format of YouTube right now, because there's a lot of white background. Do I like boners? I like having a boner. Yeah. I sometimes watch YouTube and get a bit of a boner, and I enjoy it while I'm on a treadmill. It's embarrassing, but what is my quest? Uh, I don't understand the question. What is my quest? I have a lot of goals in life. Skipping as an exercise, because I think I can do that. Like a skip around town. I don't think we could do it in Uganda, though, because they might think something about us. If we were skipping in tandem, that might be evidence for the trial that leads to our execution. Yes, these are the answers that you need, but you didn't know that you wanted. I can't do a Batman voice like the Phantom Lion can. Jordy wants me to come back next Friday like this. The reason why I came back like this is because I had motherfuckers in my comment section pissed off that I was talking about cannabis and not alcohol. Because there's always like somebody who's like, you should be talking about my cause or something else more important than what you're talking about. Jim Stacy is bringing the Monty Python references to my channel. That's okay. I'm versed in Monty Python. I've watched those, but if you start bringing the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I am woefully uneducated, and there goes my nerd cred. I have noticed that people who are in the construction industry oftentimes are alcoholics and drink far more than anyone else, and also I think part of that has to do with the lack of piss tests. If you can, as a contractor, carve out a living for yourself and not have to have anyone piss test you, you could be on anything. You know, I've known a lot of people in the trades that have no oversight over them, no HR department. They just work as handymen, and they'll be taking green beans, Loracets, to get through their workday because there's only so much you can do in your life with your body before it starts to break down. Only so many times you can swing a hammer. So then when they get home after taking Loracets to get through the day, they'll take like a soma and some beer and just try to unwind after a long workday. And this is horrible as a cycle for life. Really breaks down the body. I've had some family members die because of this kind of a cycle. So Mr. Will thinks that if we were skipping in Uganda, that it would be too hot. Like people couldn't handle the vibes that we'd be putting off. You know, we'd just be attracting all of the men to us. I guess. I'm just intentionally misunderstanding what he's typing. That's all. But yeah, some of the trades have people drunk or high while they're working, and they're also on pitched roofs. Now, if it's a roofer who's working on a flat roof, that's relatively safe, especially with the smaller of the power tools that they might be working with. But if they're on a pitched roof and they're walking around like a mountain goat, with their ankles at an angle, that shit's just fucking amazing. It's scary. Okay, everybody in the chat that's talking about TJ and his use of the banana. Let me just defend TJ for a second here. Prior to TJ sticking that banana up his ass, one of the greatest creationist arguments from Ray Comfort was that the banana was proof of intelligent design because it was made to fit in your hand. Okay? But when TJ showed definitively that the banana is also designed to fit up your ass, he pwned the fuck out of Ray Comfort's argument forever. And for that, I am grateful because somebody had to take on the banana argument. Roof. Yeah, forklift drivers should have to use a breathalyzer before they even start work because it's at that level of employment where people haven't worked on their career a lot that people are more likely to be drunk. And if they're lifting things around other people with those forklifts, yes, they should have to take a breathalyzer before they get behind the wheel of their forklift. Every HR that has that's part of like a distribution center, they should just stand there with a gun with straws on it, breathalyzing people and switching out the straws, you know. They could put interlock systems on forklifts, you think? Just like drunk drivers who are sentenced to have the interlock system in their car, you could put one in forklifts, prevent a whole bunch of accidents. Us is now outing me as the person who sent him the video of TJ uh, getting himself screwed with a banana and also pouring hot water on his micropenis. I felt so bad for his micropenis with all the hot water being poured on it. I didn't know what was in the pan, but just by his reaction of ow, ow, it's just like poor penis. It's already small. Why are you picking on something so small? Yeah, there's a great a picture of all different scenes from that movie that TJ made, where he was doing all of those S&M things, and I think it's a really good uh, summary of all that happened. So if you don't want to watch the video, somebody might pass you just that picture with the different scenes in it, because that's all you really need to see. You don't have to like watch the whole thing. Are people tested in Colorado for being high while driving? They can be, okay. Um, and the way that the law works, it's not so good for civil liberties as far as a policeman can take you down to a hospital and have you held uh, until you want to give up your bodily fluids. Now, they can't force you to give up your bodily fluids, but they can assume that you are guilty if you don't give them up, right? And if you were to have your blood drawn so that they can do a blood test on how much THC is in your system, that evidence would be used against you. They can't compel that because it's an invasive search, but your refusal actually counts against you in a court of law. Same way as you can refuse a breathalyzer test. You can, but you'll lose your license because it counts against you. See, the Nightingale says that dose is everything with pot, and I would disagree to an extent because I've seen people with their THC versus creatinine levels at 1,000 parts per million, right? And at that point, I've seen people who I would probably trust to drive a vehicle. The the limit for intoxication in Colorado, they were proposing 5 nanograms per deciliter, which is far below what I'm talking about here. At 5 nanograms, you could be considered under the influence a week after smoking one joint. Or if you were a heavy user, you wouldn't be able to drive your car for 3 fucking weeks after you stopped using medical grade cannabis. So the dose, it's not as important in my mind as what someone's tolerance is and what they normally walk around at as far as their THC levels, because those levels do kind of spike after someone is using, and then they go to a point where they kind of plateau and they go down slowly. And at that point, most of the people that I've seen driving uh, and being regular users of cannabis, that if they ever got pulled over and tested, yeah, they'd be high, but they're not very impaired. And there are Department of Transportation studies which show that the 5 nanogram level doesn't really mean as much as when was the last time someone used, because the spike of their use is what's really creating the huge imbalance and really creating the inability to operate machinery. No, only one Wi-Fi. This discussion is about any reason that you think that uh, you want me to say alcohol is worse than cannabis. I can think of one reason why alcohol could be better than cannabis, but only one springs to mind right now, and that would be the gonadotropic effects of THC as far as birth defects. Because alcohol's effect on your gonads tends to be while you're using, But with other drugs, the effects on your sperm count, uh, the health of your sperm, all of that stuff, and especially in women, the effects on unfertilized eggs that are to be used later in life, those last a lot longer than what fetal alcohol syndrome does during pregnancy when a woman's drinking. Like, you could stop using LSD, and then 10 years later, if it's a woman, 10 years later, her eggs might still be affected and have the DNA scrambled in them. Scrambled in eggs is a very good term to use. But yeah, there are gonadotropic effects that I feel might be worse with THC, but I have no studies to back that up. It would be very unethical to dope people with different drugs and then see how fucked up are their kids when they have kids. It'd be really fucking unethical to do that. And to try to do it after the fact with different drugs, you're just not getting good research with the kids that are already out there. A lot of what research you'd be doing would be relying on people's recollection as to when they used, which can be very unreliable. But I will say this. In different programs that I've worked for, there are different concentrations of users. And if you were to go to a detox facility, I would say in any major city, 95 or more percent of all the people in that detox facility are there for alcohol and maybe some other drugs along with it, most likely tobacco, but they're not there for the tobacco use. They're there because of alcohol withdrawal, because alcohol withdrawal can kill you. You can have a seizure if you drink too much, right? And you drink too much regularly. If you try to quit on your own, you can have a seizure and die. So you go to a detox to safely detox. So other drugs, when you're coming off of them, do not have the same risk of death. If you want to come down off cocaine, off crack, off methamphetamines, you just come down. You can do that at home. Just stop, right? If you're coming down off heroin, you're going to be in pain. You're not going to die. You're going to feel like dying. The person who drinks alcohol has a risk of dying, and they might not even feel it coming on until a couple seconds before they have their seizure, right? But somebody who's on heroin, they're regularly doping their pain centers of their brain. So they're going to feel like dying. And that feeling of pain, some people have no pain tolerance, so they're more likely to go fucking use in order to get right and ruin their attempt at withdrawal management. So those people check into detox in order to hide from drugs while they're detoxing. They get to that point where they're dope sick, and they'll check themselves in just to have a safe place to be where people aren't offering them dope, right? But that is less than 5% of the people that you will find in a detox facility, right? So if you were to just take the numbers from detoxes, you would see in that situation, alcohol is worse than every fucking thing. Everything. It's a more widespread problem than everything. Risk of death wise, the things that are worse than alcohol would be other barbiturates, central nervous system depressants that you could come off of, such as transine, which is one of the drugs that they use to get people through their alcohol withdrawal. Clorazepate, people who abuse Xanax, that has a danger to it that's a little bit more deadly. But mostly those people are rare compared to alcohol and even compared to heroin withdrawal. The people who check themselves in for prescription pill barbiturates That's a fraction of a percent. So in those sorts of programs, in detox facilities, alcohol is the worst problem. In other programs that I've worked, uh, let's say emergency rooms, alcohol still dominates most of the emergency room admittance. In emergency rooms, you see a lot more meth because there is a point of smoking meth where you see people go into meth psychosis. Okay, this is not your normal meth user, not your tweaker. This is somebody who had way too much money or their boyfriend was a dealer. Okay, there is this point of meth psychosis that the only thing you can do is put them in an emergency room in a watched setting and put a guard on them. And it'll take 3 or 4 days for them to come out of meth psychosis. It's a special fucking thing. You don't see it in detox facilities, right? But even then, there are far more drunks that frequent emergency rooms than any other drug, than all the other drugs put together. Alcohol, it should be taxed far more than it is to make up for the disproportionate amount of abuse that shows up in all of these services that we're all paying for. Holy shit, the white balance of my camera is off. Like if I put my hand up next to my camera, it just gets better, right? Because that's where my camera's focusing. But when I take it away, the white balance goes off again. Sorry, I need a new fucking camera, and nobody's donating $1 to the Mike Needs a Camera Fund and wants to know how Super Chat works. All right. Going up to where you guys started chatting and leaving me behind. So Gardner Earth Guy thinks that California's water problem has to do with the growing of cannabis. And I would tend to agree that hemp and cannabis would take a lot more water to grow than other things. So if you're just looking at the societal impact on the water supply, and you're in California, yeah, maybe California should import more pot from Colorado, where we have an ample water supply from all of the mountains that we have that collect snow, and we have glaciers still. We still have a couple glaciers that haven't been melted completely by global warming or global climate change. You are right that it is very rare to see stoners fighting on the streets over nothing. The effects of cannabis don't have the anger trigger in them that alcohol does. In fact, when I'm screening someone as an intake for alcohol withdrawal, one of the questions I ask is, does drinking tend to make you angry? Do you get anxiety from drinking? Do you get insomnia from drinking? And most people, when I put it that way, they'll say, no, I don't get insomnia. Then I'll ask them, do you need to take a drink in order to get to sleep? And they'll say yes, because they don't recognize that they're getting insomnia from their alcohol withdrawal. But yeah, anger is another thing. Like, we know this. Alcohol makes people angry. Okay. Only when Wi-Fi has yet to taste an alcoholic drink and enjoy it. Good. If your taste buds are rejecting alcohol, like uh, your first impression of that, it's probably because your body doesn't like poison. And I'm not saying that I've never had a drink of alcohol. I have not year to date from from the beginning of January till now. I have not had a drink and do not want one because regularly I encounter people who have had too much to drink and it sucks all the fun out of even going past that aisle in the grocery store. So I don't even like picking up alcohol for any purpose, like parties, nothing. I don't like buying it. Alcohol is highly addictive, but uh, cocaine, opiates like heroin, and methamphetamine are all more addictive than alcohol. So if your question is alcohol as addictive as cocaine? Um, just the properties of the alcohol itself? No. Cocaine is an order of magnitude more addictive than alcohol. So is heroin. So is meth. It is pretty addictive though, compared to say uh, cannabis, which is the whole point of this hangout. Gardner Earth Guy says marijuana is evil because it destroys communities, brings crime, kills the forest, and pollutes the groundwater. Um, I will I will address the bringing crime aspect of THC. One of the things that I think in America makes that true is because although in Colorado they've legalized recreational use of cannabis, right? So just the fact that we're growing it and smoking it, the people in Colorado, in the eyes of the federal government, are doing something illegal inherently. But if we remove use and cultivation from that equation, there is still the fact that your employer does not want you smoking pot. So if it's any job that's going to require you to pass a piss test before getting it, if you are a pot connoisseur, you're not going to get that job. So if you're not as employable, what are you more likely to do in order to supplement your income? Crime is one of those answers. So I feel like if employers were to find jobs that people could use pot and just pot and still be able to be employed and do that job, let's say jobs that require not handling sharp instruments, not handling machinery, uh, jobs that you know wouldn't require you to be in any dangerous situation. If we could have employers open up those jobs and say, yeah, we don't like pot use, but you could still do this job while high, then I think we would have a lot less crime related to the unemployability of pot users. As far as killing the forest and polluting the groundwater, um, I agree that growing things that are not food and are not habitat for wildlife does destroy forests. But I would have to say that in orders of magnitude worse would be the cattle industry. And if we all just went to eating chicken instead of cattle, um, then we would put back a lot more forest, and a lot more uh, wildlife habitat than growth. You could actually probably responsibly grow pot around other sorts of trees that would be good wildlife places like mesquite, areas that have small shrubbery type trees. You could be able to cultivate pot around them. But if you're clear cutting a forest for growing pot, you're fucking evil, and you're probably big pharma trying to co-opt pot growth, which a lot of the pot activists that I know would consider those people evil. Yeah, go planet Earth. Yes, the hardest drug as far as the amount of dopamine effects that it has on the body right now that I know of is methamphetamine. Um, so the being able to come down off of it is harder. Resisting temptation for meth is harder. It as far as the addictive properties of a chemical, meth is the worst. And when you see billboards from the meth project saying "not even once," they fucking mean it. Once people use it, they are fucking hooked. And there are many cases that have come before me where somebody was tricked into using it by their dealer. You know, some of them were in prostitution, and their dealer happened to be also their pimp. But once they were hooked on it, they wanted it, and they had no choice in the matter after that. And coming down off meth is worse. The thing is, though, it won't kill you. I've never heard of someone dying from meth withdrawal ever. I have heard of meth use over time killing someone, though. Mr. Will wants to know what my thoughts on things like caffeine are. Well, it's actually listed in the DSM as its own drug addiction. Um, I am currently using caffeine right now during this live stream. This is a Diet Dr. Pepper with caffeine in it. I found that after I stopped drinking 6 to 8 Mountain Dews in a day, my caffeine tolerance went down, and a Starbucks coffee will give me the shits and give me the jitters. And so there is that other component of it of tolerance that other drugs have. Also, caffeine, if you are a regular caffeine user, want to use if you're about to take an academic test. Studies have shown that if you are a regular coffee user, the withdrawal from that, if you were to abstain on the day of a test, will negatively affect your test scores. So it's one of those things that, unlike other drugs, like I would recommend that you not smoke pot the day of your SATs. Okay. Some people might disagree with me on this. Those are probably pot users, but I would say don't smoke pot on the day of your SATs. Even if you have an anxiety problem with your SATs, don't smoke pot for your SATs. But if you are addicted to caffeine, definitely drink the amount of caffeine that you're used to drinking before taking the SATs. The only thing I can compare that to, uh, where use can actually improve performance, is people who learn very technical skills while they're drunk. I've actually seen guitarists who cannot play guitar while sober because they learned how to play guitar while they were drinking. And that's another example of a drug increasing your performance because of your use while you were learning. And I have no idea what it is about the pathways of the brain not working right while you're not on a substance if you learned how to do something while on that substance. But it's an effect that is undeniably there. Yes, and Coke Vanilla Zero will lube your tubes as a bit of the universe put it, this is tube lube. You will shit with this greasy coating, and it's a shame that it's one of the best flavors for hiding the diet taste because it could be helping a lot more people. Prince Noob Sauce just said that he sent me something on Facebook. So he wants me to stop this live stream to look at my fucking Facebook to see what he sent. Let's see. 4 comments. Oh, pictures of before and after meth users? Oh, this is your own girlfriend. Shit. Ugh. That's one thing that meth does very well is destroy someone's appearance. There's this carnival thing where people can guess your age based on different features. They'll look at your wrinkles around your eyes and stuff, and they'll say, put down $5, and if I'm within 3 years of your actual age, then I will pay you $5. It's like a carnival act. You know why you don't see that anymore? Meth. That's why. Because those meth users could walk right up to them and say, I'll bet you, Sonny, that you can't guess my age. And they'll be like 60. And they'll be like, wrong, I'm 30. I've never seen a weed smoking contest. Only one Wi-Fi. I don't go to that many cannabis festivals. And what's weird is now that we have recreational marijuana legalized in our state, there are less cannabis festivals because the educated in public statutes are such that cops will now go to a weed fest and arrest people a lot more likely than they would before it was legalized, where it was basically people coming together like a taller festival, like the Black Crowes concerts and shit. And now we have more people being arrested in that sort of situation. And in fact, the promoters of those fests are now responsible if they are attracting people who will be intoxicated in public. And because of the few people who would be assholes and get all fucked up, they can't have those weed fests anymore. I'm glad that meth hasn't caught on in the UK either. It's a very, very bad thing. But there are worse things in the world that you could be hooked on than meth. They're just not popular, right? Those that I know of, one would be crocodile, which is basically like trying to make a meth heroin or a meth slash morphine derivative. And that's something that's taken over in Russia because the recipe has something to like people knowing the recipe is a big part of it. People Googled it here in America, how to make meth, and they watched Breaking Bad, and so we have this fucking explosion of meth. In the Russia, many of the sites that would have had these recipes were blocked, so the information didn't get out. But just colloquially amongst the people, the recipe for crocodile got out. Flocka would be one of those things that I've only heard of, never had an actual case before me. So I cannot tell you what it does to people, but what I've heard about it doing, like the Florida that made someone eat someone's face off, yes, Flocka sounds like it is far fucking worse. I don't even know the chemical composition of Flocka. Like, to me, it's like this mythical, horrible drug that, if it ever took over, would be worse than meth. The one thing that is actually happening in America that I know of cases of, like far more than crocodile and flaca, is carfentanil. And I would warn anyone against using heroin just as a general thing from as an addiction counselor. But what's happening now is drug dealers are lacing their heroin with carfentanil, right? Fentanyl itself is a regulated scheduled drug that they use as a painkiller in hospital situations, in emergency room situations. Is something that you would only use as like an elephant tranquilizer, right? And the way that these uh, drug dealers got large supplies of it before uh, it was cracked down upon, they were buying it from China, which anything manufactured in China should throw up a red flag to you, right? You never want your kids chewing on toys from China. But this carfentanil is very, very fucking potent poison to humans. Okay. So they lace the heroin with the carfentanil, and people will say, we're getting so much higher off this new batch of heroin. You got to have it. Well, the amount of carfentanil that you would add to heroin to cut it, to make it stronger, is like microscopic, right? Those dealers have to be so fucking careful, right? And they're ending up with a product that is 50 times stronger than normal heroin. 50 times, right? So it's 50 times more likely to stop your fucking heart as a tranquilizer. To me, it's my biggest real fear for a trend across America, because the opioid epidemic is booming right now. Lots more people are getting hooked on heroin, and people have come up dead. Especially, there are stories in Cleveland where there was a cluster of like 15 people who all died from the same batch of heroin. And people didn't used to die from these things so suddenly. Their deaths were more a progression of their disease, not acute death from one fucking shot, right? Overdoses happened, but you could predict that somebody would get worse in their addiction and get to the point of overdosing. But, you know, on the streets, first people were blaming it on, right? China White. It's not like the Chinese have this better recipe for heroin than the fucking Mexican cartels do, right? The Mexicans would just get their product and start planting it, right? The reason why this China White thing was out there was they were lacing it with carfentanil, right? It is the most dangerous thing that a dealer could do, is switch out his normal product where people have a little bit of an idea of how potent it is, and then add some carfentanil to it, because that's going to kill someone, and it has. Now, Prince Noob Sauce thinks it's a bad business strategy to kill your customers, right? It can actually be a calling card. Like, people will be like, "Oh, I've been looking for something that'll get me as high as I was the first time I used." You know, I've been looking for something stronger. And they'll hear that somebody died on a certain street block. They'll go to that street block looking for the harder stuff. So Noob Sauce thinks it's a bad business strategy to kill your customers. That's all drug dealers fucking do. Like, bottom line, drug dealers, right? Whatever the drug is, it's killing them a little bit. Addiction is like the slowest form of fucking suicide imaginable, right? And those three harder categories, the meth, cocaine, and opiate derivatives, those categories are the worst for killing your customers. You know, Sarah wants to know what my thoughts are on movements to legalize, tax, and regulate these substances to stop overdoses, drug mixing, and funding the cartels. Um, I want to see cannabis decriminalized and also destigmatized by employers. I do. But I would like to see alcohol more highly regulated. I would like to see alcohol rationed like it is in the military when you're overseas. When I was overseas in the military, you could get 2 12 packs a week, or you could get 2 bottles of Jack Daniels, like fifths, right? That's as much as you could possibly buy because the Class 6, the military store that sold it, was rationing to everyone because they had to ship it in from the United States and they only shipped in so much for everyone. And I would like to see, like certain states that have liquor stores that are controlled by the state, I would like to see rationing. You know, I'll say, yeah, uh, it's your body, and the libertarian argument of freedom. Yeah, I can see someone responsibly drinking a glass of wine, but at a ridiculous point, if you're drinking more than 2/5 of alcohol in a week, I want you stopped. You know, I want there to be some point where no, they will not sell you more, right? Bartenders being responsible for people leaving their bars in a drunk state and say getting into a car accident or getting into a drunken public incident. I want to see that. I want to see bars being liable for the clients that I have that show up in a detox and then cost taxpayers money because they're on Medicaid. You know, I want to see the bar get the tab if we can prove that that guy is frequenting that bar after hours to get even more drunk. Because liquor sales stop at a certain time in our city, but everybody knows you can just go to a bar till 3 a.m. You know, and if I can prove that the guy is leaving the bar and walking right into a detox for a free place to sleep at night because he's an alcoholic homeless person who panhandles for the money right after he gets out of the detox, right? If I see this cycle going on, I want more taxes on that bar. Because you know who's paying to enable this cycle by giving this guy a place to sleep at night just because he's drunk? Me, my taxes. You know, you guys. So I don't like seeing that these medical services are being overused by people who are being enabled by this. I've seen cases where people have had hundreds and even thousands of admits at a detox, meaning they come in, get to sleep overnight to sleep off their alcohol. They get a free place to sleep. They get free food because they're on Medicaid, which gets billed for it, right? And then they just do the cycle all over again because they learn, oh, if I drink, that means I get a place to sleep. You know, the the homeless shelters are overcrowded. There's a lottery system to get into them. And every time it snows, especially, you'll see emergency rooms and detoxes full of people who are abusing the system. And those people that are enabling it on the front end, the bars and the liquor stores, they should be taxed more because I don't like the fact that it's being rolled up under a medical cost and then all the rest of us are paying for it. We now have mandatory fucking health insurance here in America. You have to pay to get it. And those of us who are paying for it are paying more just to subsidize this bullshit. So you don't like this angle? Wants to know if this is an Eat Crow stream. Not really. It's more addressing those people that you're talking about cannabis. Why don't you talk about alcohol? And I'm fully willing to do that. We were just talking about cannabis. That was the subject. But for those people who say that I need to come clean and say alcohol is worse than cannabis, I'm saying it right now in simple terms. Yes, it is. Alcohol is worse than cannabis in many different ways, and we've gone over a lot of them in this live stream. Declared Nerd mentioned that alcohol is also bad for the people around alcoholics. Outside of my field, outside of my expertise of addiction, there are other psychotherapists that I know of, friends of mine, that work in a different field called domestic violence, right? Do you know what domestic violence in Denver is? When the Denver Broncos lose a football game. Do you know what the biggest spike in alcohol admits into detoxes and emergency rooms are? When the Denver Broncos lose a football game. So these two things have one similar correlate, right? Do I even have to give you guys references for the anger that alcohol causes leading to domestic violence? Or do you have your own examples in your own life that you could just draw from? Alcohol leads to domestic violence, right? So that's the worst case scenario for alcohol being bad for the people around you, right? You're going to beat your wife and you're going to beat your kids, right? Don't do the alcohol too much, right? Nightingale says Obamacare is going away. Well, a lot of the rhetoric of Donald Trump has been about repeal and replace. And what's funny is when Donald Trump says things like, don't worry, we're still going to have health care for everyone, right? Which Obamacare started as like Romney Care in Massachusetts, right? And it was there basically to get universal health care off the table, right? It was there as something to make people complacent about wanting universal health care, right? And what Trump could be going towards is going to look more like universal health care than Obamacare was when his rhetoric says things like everyone's going to have universal access. Yeah, Bitfreak says universal access, right? It's we're headed as a country in the United States towards universal health care, no matter what anyone puts up as a defense. And every step of the way, the political parties are just worried about whose name is on it. They can't afford politically to have Obama's name in Obamacare, right? They want it to be Trump care. They want it to be Republican care because it being Obamacare for the rest of time means Democrats brought you health care. And that's something that they cannot politically afford. And it is as simple as a dick size contest between two political parties. And making it anything more than that is just confusing the whole situation, right? What I will say is that Obamacare might be repealed or aspects of the Affordable Care Act might be repealed. It's not going to affect the way that it has impacted society. And those clients of mine that already have are not going to have their Medicaid access removed from them, right? It's just going to be the pathway that most of them were getting Medicaid on a mandatory level will stop. But some of the state hospitals here in Denver have an ability to immediately assess people and grant them Medicaid on an emergency basis, which is only good within that hospital or that series of hospitals, right? But the way that they have to grant it is still going to continue with the Affordable Care Act or not, because it's actually a state level thing. And so most of my clients having Medicaid has been a good thing because there's someone that can be billed for their counseling services. Um, and I don't see, even if you repealed the Affordable Care Act, people know that Medicaid is out there, right? They know that they can go apply for it, and they know different ways to lie to get it if they have to. They can just, if they're right over the tipping point and they get rejected by going to one hospital, they can go to another hospital and apply there. You know, in fact, there are some hospitals that will coach them along the way just to get them Medicaid so that the hospital will get paid in a guaranteed way. So this shit is not stopping. He can repeal all he wants, you know. That the people more and more are headed towards universal care, and that as that single payer system becomes more and more what the people want is not something that Trump can stop by repealing Obamacare and replacing it with whatever. Um, the will of the people is really where this fight's going to be. Pepe care, right? God, you just reminded me of Shia LaBeouf's art project. I just so want to go down to fucking Manhattan and fuck with that thing. You know, I don't know what I would do. I probably wouldn't be in a Pepe suit, but I would do something meme worthy on that camera. If I was within 500 miles of that thing, I'd already have fucking visited that camera. Holy shit. That's just an open invitation for trolls. Yes, kitty corner, Australia has a better healthcare system than America. It's not a very high bar to aspire to be better than America. That is not a can of Mountain Dew. Twunt. Twunt 2000. Is that a real fucking name? No. Anyways, it's a Diet Dr. Pepper. Um, it's my Mountain Dew replacement therapy. When I get too stressed out, I stock my diet alternatives because I do not want to go back to drinking full bodied soda. No, I am not a fucking regular Dr. Pecker drinker, Sarah. I drink A&W Diet Cream Soda, and I also sparingly drink the Coke Vanilla Zero, even though it gives me the shit squirts. I have not seen Steins Gate. I don't know what it is. And now people are giving me drink suggestions. Prince Noob Sauce wants to know what flavor Dr. Pecker is. And originally, Dr. Pecker was supposed to be prune flavored soda. I know this because I researched the origins of Mountain Dew, which was originally supposed to be an orange flavored soda. That's why you can see the orange pulp in knockoffs of Mountain Dew. If you were to take them and if you find their 2 liter bottles of fake Mountain Dew, like Mountain Lightning, and turn it upside down, you can see the orange pulp float to the bottom. Yes, the health situation is awful, right? The healthcare situation is awful in America. I would actually think that people in economics 101 in like the high school level might actually tell people it would be financially advantageous of you to sign up for military service for 2 years, even though you're going to have low pay while you're in the military. Because if you were to get VA health care after you got out, you would be saving yourself hundreds of dollars a year, like I do, because my health care is free and I don't have to pay for insurance, right? Sarah says that Mountain Dew was made for and by hardcore gamers, that I'm just talking BS. Um, Mountain Dew has had many different iterations of its advertising. It didn't start being associated with extreme sports and video games until the last 2 decades. Prior to that, it was actually associated with hillbillies and hillbilly country lifestyle in all of its ads. We don't have safe injecting rooms here in America as a there is no harm reduction program like that. We do have free needle programs, and the best part of the free needle programs is the naltrexone injection, where somebody can be trained in like a short class on how to save someone's life if they've overdosed by injecting them with naltrexone. And so when they get their free bundles of needles, thereafter, if they've been trained for naltrexone, one of those needles will have the naltrexone in it. A bit of the universe is listing off the different Mountain Dews, just I guess to try to trigger my addiction. I have not had a Mountain Dew since January 4th, 2016. I'm working on 13 months now, 14 months of no Mountain Dews, and I'm 30 pounds lighter. Yeah, free needles is a good start because I have seen some horrible things as an addiction counselor. One of them being abscesses and people who have suffered from flesh eating viruses that have come from being injected by dirty needles. Uh, Not the least of which being dirty with Hep C. Hepatitis C is very prevalent among needle users, but the just the dirtiness of the drugs that are being injected, heroin especially, the contaminants that are being injected, you can get an abscess, right? And so these abscesses eating away at people's flesh from the inside, you'll see pockets where there's no uh, body fat underneath the skin, and it's disgusting. Just look up videos of crocodile to know what the abscesses really look like. But I've heard so many different excuses for these arms looking the way that they have. I had one girl lie to me and say that it was a car accident and that her arms caught fire because that's how bad it looked. It looked like her arms were scarred from fire burns. Yeah, I have seen people shooting meth in order to counteract the sleepiness that they get from heroin, and seen meth and heroin used together in conjunction. I have seen that. Used to be speedballs back in the day that our comedians would die from mixing heroin and cocaine use, but uh, I think the biggest problem with the opiate epidemic is that we're not holding the pharmaceutical companies that put out OxyContin and uh, different opiate products accountable. Um, and we're making it so people get cut off of these addictive substances without tapering down. And doctors are afraid to prescribe courses of drugs just to taper down because they're afraid that they're just enabling addicts. So they'll prescribe just enough of OxyContin to get someone addicted after a surgery, and then not prescribing them anything to uh, come down off of that addiction. They're just like, well, we'll wait and see if you get addicted, and then they're not paying attention to the fact that so many people have no pain tolerance, and that pain tolerance of not being able to go through 1 week of withdrawal, that's what leads to people finding a heroin needle. You know, pain is a very big motivator for many people. My own pain tolerance is very high, and so I don't have that issue as much, but people not being able to deal with a headache even is a huge motivator for them to pop some pills. And when you have somebody who just had a surgery and you only prescribe them enough for the first couple weeks of rehabilitation after that surgery, and then they you have something there that could be painful, and to not give them anything else to come down off of those hard opiates and still address their pain, that's just a recipe for disaster. That's why we have this huge opiate epidemic. A bit of the universe. I want to know what your home state is, where you say your hometown is. Yeah, the fentanyl laced heroin is killing people daily, especially in eastern cities here in America right now, and it's piggybacking on the heroin epidemic. And the dealers could have gotten it from veterinary services as an elephant tranquilizer from China with like no oversight, because the carfentanil that they were getting, it was not regulated well enough through ports. So people could actually just get it openly by buying it from China and just saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a veterinarian," and then they had what it took to lace their heroin and kill people. Yes, fentanyl was first used to lace the heroin. Then they started using carfentanil. And it's a prefix, CAR. Google it and find out how much more dangerous it is. That is funny that some people can learn the metric system when they live in America and we don't have the metric system, and people can learn algebra in order to cut their drugs, and you know they might have had an F in a high school math, but they sure know how to know whether or not they're being cheated in their meth transaction. Yes, Twunt, it is that much more powerful. In fact, carfentanil is so much more powerful that I don't even trust anyone who thinks that they have the answer as to how much more powerful it is than regular heroin. When heroin is laced with carfentanil, because when it's that much, how the fuck do you know? You know, how does a chemist know how much more powerful a painkiller is when you basically have to die to find out? There are many things that Americans are being inundated with the metric system in subversive ways, uh, like the size of computer components and USB ports and whatnot, but also like uh, take the measurements of adapters for cameras and whatnot. Uh, we're getting metric things and we're just not realizing it yet, you know? So I feel like we can only hold out with feet and yards for so long, you know? There are half of our cars that we buy, you have to use metric wrenches in order to repair them. We still measure things in horsepower. Um, I'll tell you why they're stopping the use of morphine. They use Demerol more than morphine in ER settings, but also fentanyls for much more painful situations, and also situations where you have someone who has developed a tolerance for opiates. That's something that exists now that we have an opiate epidemic. I'm going to agree with Nightingale's comment. He says that we should stop telling people what they can and cannot take, but treat the person so that they have no need of escape or self medication or pain relief. And that's true. I could take people who are normally drunks and ship them off to an island where there's no alcohol available and leave them there for months to dry them out. We have the equivalent of that in sending people to prison or jail for a very long time. And when they get out, if they still have those underlying issues that make them seek out the alcohol for self medication, if they still want to numb themselves from feelings that they haven't addressed, they're just going to go right back to it. So treating people as people in a holistic sense, in the classic sense of the word holistic, treating people as whole people is a better it's a better path. The worst example of that, I think, is when people have co-occurring disorders. The statistics on what happens when you treat someone's addiction and not their schizophrenia, or treat their schizophrenia and not their addiction, uh, it amounts to almost breaking your vow of do no harm, because it turns out that you're hurting them versus helping them. Because if you're taking away someone's self-medication and you're not treating the underlying problem, then you're making the underlying problem worse. Mr. Will, if you can't call what Americans call football football, you can say gridiron football. It's not USA football. I mean, they have the CFL in Canada now. So it's gridiron football. Sarah wants to call it hand egg. Egg ball. Uh, we could call it super rugby if you like. Um, so I've been at this hangout for 2.5 hours now, and I think in order to let people like Robert Wallace and Mr. Will thinks about address some of the issues that I've talked about, plus let some of the people who want to say that I need to talk about some other topic speak. I'm going to call this quits. And nobody has donated $1 in super chat, so maybe I don't even have the feature. So I'll look into that. And it's been fun. Thanks for stopping by, you 15 viewers that are left. And hopefully next time I'll come with a more controversial topic than the drugs that you all are using. Laters.